We had a client have a 600% increase in sales between Q1 of this year and Q2. And what I want to do in this video is share with you some of the shifts that we made that contributed to that dramatic increase in performance. So then that way you could take some of that and apply it to your own organization. Let's dive right in. Improving the performance of any sales team is complicated. There are a lot of moving pieces, and one of the things that actually frustrates me a lot is people feel that sales is simple. Like, oh, just do sales calls and close deals, or say these specific words in this special way, and then you're gonna get a whole bunch of new business. It doesn't work that way. In fact, I've worked with companies that sell into the exact same industry with very similar products that you'd think you could just copy the same approach for, and it just fell flat on its face. Why? Because there's a lot of things that go into it. There's a lot of moving pieces. There's internal and external factors. There's culture of the organization. There's all these things. So in this video, I'm going to share with you some things that worked for this client that we were working with. And there were 3 key shifts that we made that had an impact on their performance in Q2. The first thing is we changed the strategic direction by the end of the first quarter. And really what drove this change is an activity that we call value mapping. I won't get into it in this video, but you can find a video on our channel about it. Essentially what this is an activity you can do to get a lot of clarity on the value that you're providing your target customer. It focuses specifically on what drives that value and ultimately influences the willingness to pay of that customer. I wrote a newsletter about it. I'll put a link to that in the description if you want to give it a read, and that'll help give you an idea of how you can actually implement that into your own organization. At the end of Q1, we did value mapping with this client, and what we found is that they can actually adjust their focusing just a little bit to really prioritize the customers that are receiving the most value, where we can position ourselves very, very powerfully to get the result that the customer is looking to get. That has a really big impact because now you're speaking directly to challenges that have a really large impact on the organizations that you service. So action item for you, do value mapping. Really get clarity around the value you're providing, who you're providing it for, and how they would rank those value props, and based on who experiences the most value, speak directly to that. Shift number 2 is we added a lot of structure to the processes that they were doing to get in customers and also increase sales velocity. So the first process here was actually event outreach. They didn't have a lot of structure around events, but it was a big driver of leads for them. So what we recommended doing is doing check-ins at every event, every hour with the sales team to see how many people they spoke to, how many meetings they booked. We also gave the sales team all their own calendar links and instructed them to book the time on the calendar right then and there with the person that you're talking to. Do not rely on follow-ups after the event. That's where all these things fall through. And after the event, for anyone you didn't book with, if you have the list of leads, we do call blitz for a 10-day period of time to try to book as many as we can with those folks because we didn't get the opportunity to meet with them in person. The second thing here are pipeline reviews and deal deep dives. At the end of the day, most pipeline meetings are terrible. And by structuring clearly what you're supposed to do in pipeline meetings, but more importantly, going deeper into each and every deal, what you find is that you're building a lot more confidence around each opportunity that you have in front of you. And you're also getting rid of any deals that are very unlikely to close. So you have a more realistic vision of what your pipeline is and what it's going to produce. Number 3 is we actually did more founder closing. So not all of the sales process was driven by the founder, but for key deals, we actually pulled in the founder and leveraged them in order to help move the deal forward quicker. This had a big impact. It didn't require a lot of time from the founder. The sales rep was still doing all of the selling. It was just a nice added thing that really gave the potential customer more confidence in moving forward with the solution. So an action item here for you. Take a little bit of time and figure out what are things that you're doing regularly that aren't very structured systems. When you don't have a process in place for things that you're doing, it's very hard to measure how effective they are, but more importantly, what part of those processes are not effective. So get a lot of clarity. Think about things that you do or your team does and actually write it out, build a process for it, and start measuring that process, and you'll see you'll be able to make tweaks to improve it. And shift number 3 here is we revise the sales deck. Look, a lot of sales decks are pretty weak, and some folks don't even sell with a deck at all. I personally and team deck, but it's got to be customer centric. If your deck is talking a lot about you and not a lot about the problems that you solve for the potential customer, that's where you need to put a lot of focus. We did this work in Q1 and it had a really big impact impact come Q2. So an action step for you here is look at your deck, maybe give it to a founder friend, get some feedback, see, is this speaking to my customer or is this speaking about us? That will help you get clarity around where you need to make changes or what you need to add to the deck in order to make it more customer centric. And those were 3 shifts. Look, a lot of things happen, okay? I don't want to oversimplify how difficult it is to actually turn around the performance of a sales team or increase the performance of a sales team if they're doing okay already. There's a lot of moving pieces. There's a lot of alignment that has to happen. A lot of times growth is even being stalled by misalignment within the executive team. There's all of these moving parts. But by being really focused on specific areas, you'll make big improvements. And that's what we saw here. Luckily, they have an executive team that's very aligned. They're very motivated, very focused, and they execute really well. So you're able to see a lot more results from organizations that are like that than the ones that are very dysfunctional. Hopefully you found this helpful. If you have any questions or you want to know how you can apply some of this stuff to you specifically, comment below. I love hopping in there and answering questions. And in the meantime, like, comment, subscribe, share this with a friend. I really appreciate it. We'll talk soon.